Well, it's a very easy answer. I think we are actually living through a pivotal momentum when it comes to the new geoeconomic, geopolitical structure worldwide. And what we need is a revamped Eurogroup. And from my side, I think I can actually be the person leading this revamped Eurogroup that can be a Eurogroup that is more agile, more efficient in decision making, and somehow also concentrating discussions on where they are needed. I have also, when you look at my recent past, the past of actually bringing people down to the table and striking deals even on difficult issues such as the EU fiscal rules, and of course always been a team player and part of the solution, as is always the case with Spain.
Minister, you mentioned Spain being a team player, but again, in the headlines last week, Spain was very much criticized for not following through with that pledge of 3.5% of defense spending and sticking at 2.1%. It was kind of painfully clear in that family photo of Pedro Sanchez, the Prime Minister of Spain, standing almost on the sidelines of the group there. So how much this kind of international standing kind of potentially damaged Spain's position in general to chair some international groups like the Eurogroup?
But I would say that we have to differentiate two discussions. So on the first hand, on the one hand, we have actually how to split the NATO defense spending amongst the different allies. And then on the other hand, we have a discussion on how much should each and every member state spend in terms of a percentage of GDP. And when it comes to the first discussion, you know that there is a very clear methodology where you actually update the threats that the allies will be facing. You look at what capabilities do we have now, what capabilities will we need to actually protect ourselves from those threats, and then how to go up to those capabilities and how to share that cost between member states. And Spain will provide for its share. We will do our utmost to, of course, fulfill our commitments on that front. But then there is a sovereign decision on how much we want to spend in terms of security and defense. And of course, we are very respectful of what each and every ally wants to do, but we will be doing this decision. We will be taking this decision at the national level. So we'll make good on our commitments. And then at the same time, we will also keep on doing things that we've been doing for the past few years, making this bet for security and defense compatible, for example, with the protection of our welfare state.
Spain was in the headlines a lot last week, not only at NATO, but also when it comes to banking consolidation. And of course, your government presented some of its objections, potentially to merge, some of the conditions for the merger between BBVA and Sabadell. And we know that the capital market union has been a key element highlighted for the competitiveness of the bloc, highlighted in the Draghi report in particular, and as part of that, the banking union as well. So Spain has been facing some criticism in not allowing this merger, or actually putting some hurdles that could impeach that merger. So can you explain your position there, and then how does that again puts maybe your positioning as president of the Eurogroup in a bit of a controversial position?
Well, let me also try to separate two different elements. So as you know, Spain has been advocating for making progress on the CMU, on the Capital Markets Union, or Savings and Investments Union. And actually, we put on the table a new tool, a new governance tool that we call the Competitiveness Lab, which is in essence a way for us to go forward in terms of making progress in the Capital Markets Union. We actually started we had a quick start a couple of weeks ago with 7 other countries on putting on the table a first product for the CMU, which was a label which is called Finance Europe, that will be used to redirect savings from European citizens into European projects. So that's the first tangible progress that we made in the course of the past few years, and that came out of an initiative that came from Spain, that came from us. So really, I think no one can doubt on our drive towards bringing the CMU to life. And then you asked me about the acquisition from Banco Sabadell, from BBVA. What the government did there was, of course, take into account the impact of this process into the relevant market, which is at this stage the Spanish market. And what we have there is specific conditions that were put on the table by the competition authority. And what we've been looking at is that this acquisition process, which we authorize, will actually be able to make 2 things compatible: the creation of value added for the shareholders, and also that this will not come to the detriment of the general interest of the Spanish citizens, workers of both entities, and also the firms that will keep on getting financing from both of them.
Minister, it's Karen jumping in. When we've spoken about both of these issues before, actually in Washington, D.C., when you first proposed there's a mini version of the CMU. So great to see it in action, that there's some forward push in terms of that initiative. But when it comes to the banks, and this seems like it may be one of the sticking points, because you have been very much against that consolidation at home. And we've spoken about an order process, about what happens in terms of CMU and some sort of consolidation across Europe. But it does feel as though your push domestically is it at odds with what Europe wants more broadly, these regional champions in banking. Isn't that true? Isn't it fair to say that the European Commission is having some concerns about your view being compatible with theirs?
Well, again, I think that we all know where we have to go. We know what the new steady state should be, and that we need banks that will have size enough to be able to compete with their big rivals, be it in the US or other areas. But on the way there, we have to make sure that this transition does not come to the detriment of general interests in the different EU member states. To me, this is key, because otherwise we will either get a backlash, or in the end point will not be the one that we would be expecting. And because in the end point, we will have very competitive big banks, but we should also take care of a diversified financial sector that also includes smaller regional banks that will take care of a closer link, for example, to the clients or to the firms. So a more efficient allocation of capital in the end with a diversified system. So we will get there, but the process is also important, and we have to take care of that process. And our national law actually allows us, the Spanish authorities, to take care of potential consequences in terms of general interests that are different from competition interests. And this is exactly what we're doing.
Minister, I want to just talk a little bit more about CMU, because there are huge investment requirements now for Europe as we talk about defence and infrastructure projects. When is a fully fledged CMU going to be forthcoming, and what can you do to make sure that happens?
Well, again, as you said, we have been piling up different objectives throughout the last few years. In the Draghi report, there was an initial estimate of 800 billion of investments on a yearly basis, and that was on the lower end, because I think he was still not aware, as no one was, of the extent of the increase in defense and security spending. So we need to cover for that funding gap. Some will come from domestic spending, of course, from the domestic fiscal space of the different member states, but we need the private sector to jump in. And I think I heard it just a few minutes ago in your show, that you were some were very frustrated about the slow progress on CMU. That's our case as well. This is why we did put forward this competitiveness lab, where we can make progress. So sometimes you don't go from 27 member states, 27 different regimes to one in one go. We might have to actually go in several steps, and this is what we're putting on the table, a practical way to make progress and make good on these. You know, we have other projects, for example, on the line. One would be the standardization of ratings for SMEs, so that they can access to financing, cheaper financing also across the board, not only domestically. So there are many things actually happening now. And again, this is thanks to this push that we put in place also with the help, for example, of the French Minister of Finance, Eric Lombard, and other colleagues who've been also, I think, very clear on the fact that we need to go ahead, that we need to push forward.
Minister, we've got a few more questions. I just want to get one more in from me, if I may. One of the most important post-dictatorship figures, Felipe Gonzalez. He may be 83, but he's got fire in his belly. He says Sanchez should call elections and make way for another socialist candidate. He has a level of authority unmatched by any prime minister, i.e. he has no power at all. A, how do you respond to that? And B, sir, do you fear that's going to scupper your bid for the head of the Eurogroup?
Well, again, I think we should differentiate these two elements. When you look at the national level, what we've achieved over the past 7 years, I think the data speaks for itself. When you look at the evolution and the performance of the Spanish economy, just have to look at, for example, what happened in 2024. We were the major advanced economy that did get the largest growth rate, the fastest growing major advanced economy in 2024. And according to the IMF, this will still be the case in 2025. We're recovering purchasing power in terms of real wages for our households. We are actually having an external surplus. We're reducing our deficit and debt levels. So this is thanks, of course, this does not come from from heaven. This is just as a result of the policies that have been put in place over the past 7 years. And I think this talks about the policy agenda that has been instrumental for us to get there. We still have 2 years until the completion of this term. Many things, many big targets still to reach. For example, the completion of the next generation EU funds implementation of our recovery plan. And we still have a lot of energy and stamina to go. And I don't think this will have any impact at all on the elections of the Eurogroup, to be honest.
Minister, there's a lot of
except
talk around
for
the
a positive
dollars.
impact, if I may say, because as I said, if you look at the numbers, then it can speak very good for our performance.
Minister, there's a lot of talk around the dollar status as a reserve currency and how now could be an opportunity for the euro to position itself as a global reserve currency as well. And there's renewed push from France in particular for more joint EU debt as part of that effort to make the euro more attractive for international markets. So can I have your take and your positioning on this opportunity for the euro at the moment and on this idea of more joint EU debt?
Of course, as you said, it is a key moment for the euro to actually also take a step up and be able to strengthen its role as a main international currency. And there are many areas, there are many aspects where we should actually keep on working from then on. One is, of course, to increase the supply of euro-denominated assets. There are many ways to do that. One of them, as you mentioned, is when we think about the financing of public goods at the EU level, such as defense, which is a key example, there is an element there. There is a key case for these to be financed, amongst other sources, by euro financing, by common denominated financing. This is actually what the Commission did put on the table and what we did agree on, which is a safe instrument, which is 150 billion of euro joint debt that will be used for defense purposes. This is just one example, but I think that one that goes in the right direction. And we have to reinforce our infrastructures. We have to make good on the euro, for example, to be in the currency for exchanges in terms of all the green or climate related transactions. So there are many ways for us to reinforce the euro, but this is the path forward.